Well, I think it's important to separate NATO, now 30, soon to be maybe 32 members, from then the US's other alliance networks. Quite famously, of course, you know that in Asia, there isn't a NATO, there is it's called a hub and spoke model of US bilateral alliances, basically. And the US has different reasons for having approached this. So in NATO, we're seeing right now that one country, or maybe two, Hungary and Turkey, are preventing Finland and Sweden from becoming members when quite clearly NATO, United States, France, Germany, etc., would like Finland to be members. So I think it is incumbent to nations to realize what NATO, for instance, is for political discussions and preparations for common defense. But of course, common defense is a limited in its geographic scope. It doesn't mean if the US goes and attacks somewhere that all of NATO then has to support it. Some NATO members might, and some don't, as we saw in 2003 in Iraq. Um, I think if I look at Finland, it's a matter of our constitution mentions the EU, which is a broader societal security economic focus, and NATO will be part of it. So it'll be a negotiation, I think, as always, between national interests and then collective interests. It's too soon to see how Finland will deal within NATO, but I don't think it'll be very different from how Finland tries to be constructive within the EU and solve problems rather than, as a small country trying to create them.
Yeah, I'm not as optimistic. I do understand that Finland has a long and complicated history with Russia, and certainly that's playing into the current circumstances. And indeed, the current circumstances provided the tipping point for Finland to want to change its mind and finally join NATO. I do think we have reached a point where the United States is, I think, very deliberately, certainly after Trump and with the Biden administration, trying to re-extend U.S. hegemony over Europe and to use this as leverage. I do think that the U.S. is a key driver of escalating the conflict. I think the expansion of NATO after the Cold War was a key driver of the conflict. I think the conflict is driven substantially by the United States wanting to perpetuate fossil fuels and the power of the U.S. dollar, and Russia wanting to perpetuate fossil fuels, but not with the U.S. dollar. I think there are a lot of issues that are going on here that are quite frankly very overwhelming of whatever Finland thinks is in its own narrow interest. So I would be very cautious of getting on board this fast-moving train, because I don't think it's going to end up where most Finnish people hope it does.